Hi again, here to answer more questions. I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt because this was the last work day before Halloween and everybody dressed up at the office, and my job was to dress up as a tourist in Hawaii, and this was the best I could do, was wear this shirt. Let's take a quick look here. Just pick another question from the pile. Why does everyone have different values? Because everybody's different. There's free will, you'll see me talk about this a lot. It's really important. People have free will, so they choose, and our choices are a product of a lot of things. In the end, we make a choice, and it's just us that makes that choice. But things influence our choices, and what influences our choices? You can think about some things. Let me know if I miss any. Our choices are influenced, not made, but influenced by everything that's in us, all of our experience, all the things that we're born with, where we're born, the time we're born in, the people around us, how our parents taught us, if we had parents, major events and minor events that happen in life. Everything is an influence. Ideally, things like literature and music and everything else influences us, and of course the scriptures and whatever we grew up with, or whatever we came to at some other point in life. And of course the other thing that influences our decisions, which means values are ultimately decisions that we come to over time. The other thing that influences our decisions a lot are our previous decisions. If there is a book and I decide to pull this book out and read it, then, where will I end up? This is a book on law, on business law, and here's things about negotiable documents of title. Well, or sales of personal property. I might read something in this book, and because I know this thing, I will make a different decision someday that I wouldn't have made if I hadn't read this. And then you say, well, but that's chance. Well, is it chance? Or is it that it's a mixture that the book happens to be there? But why is the book there? Did I choose this book? Did I put it there? I may not have actually literally put that book there. Somebody else was cleaning up in here. But I have that book for a reason, and I chose to pick that one up. I could have chosen one to the left, which was a book on his experience of history by Winston Churchill, or the memoirs of Ulysses Grant, or Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations. That's right over here to the right of it. Or the New Garden Encyclopedia. How do I know? I look at it, but my eye's drawn to something, and that's based on who I am that makes me choose that book. And then I choose whether or not to have books at all. I have books in here because this is what I chose. So, sometimes things that look random are not so random. Why does everybody have different values? Because we're all different. We have all these this mixed soup of all these things around us that we decide from, and it carries forward from there. So we all end up in a different place. Now, even if we all say we have the same values, we'll still deal with it a little bit differently. And if you want an example of that, is look at the variety of all the thousands of saints that there are. Those are all people that we say got it right. We say that they did it right. Doesn't mean they did everything right, because they can make mistakes and still be saints. But in the end, we say that they died happy. We say that, even if they died as a martyr, they died happy. That they died at peace with God, being not just obedient, but living that life. And yet, you can't see more variety than you see in the saints. So do they all have the same values? In a sense, yes. Do they all have the same values? Well, in another sense, no. Because in another way, they valued different things differently, and they went about expressing those values differently, and that's a big deal too. The expression of values can be different. Sometimes people appear to have different values when in fact their values are the same, but they express them in different ways. So that's a long answer to a short question. Let's see what else we come up with here. I tried to kind of classify these into some kind of grouping. Can you still be a good Christian or Catholic if you, examples here, forget to go to church, are gay, don't go to confession, etc. Okay, so there's kind of like two groupings in this. One of the things is, okay, you know that I climb mountains and rocks and stuff when I can, and I don't get to do it as much as I might like. But if I say that I'm a climber and I have never climbed, what does that mean? Am I a climber? And, I think here it isn't saying, are you, yeah, it says a good one. Okay, am I a good climber if I never go climb anything? And wouldn't you think not? How much do I have to climb to be a real climber, to be a good climber? I don't know. It's not something that I can tell. It's not something that I can judge. So in these things, what do we do? What does a Christian do? A Christian or a Catholic is supposed to live the life of God. We are supposed to live and act as God in the world. That's a lot to do. And, we really can't look at somebody else and say whether or not they're doing it well. We can say sometimes they're doing something that is very, very contrary to it. And that's looking at what the action is and simply seeing what's in front of our eyes. It's not judging the person because we don't know where anybody will end up. And we don't know their reasons. We don't know anyone's heart, really. But having said that, some things are more against it. If you say you're Catholic but you're never going to Mass, if you are in need of confession and don't go, well, it probably isn't what is described as a Catholic, certainly. Are you a good one? Well, it depends on the circumstances. There's a lot of things involved. Obviously there's people that have jobs that take them far away from churches. Catholics are not restricted away from those jobs. I don't know that it's an advisable thing to do, but you could choose that. And maybe you're stuck. Maybe you're in the military and you're someplace where it's just not possible to go to Mass. But if you simply don't think it's important to go to Mass, if you don't think it's important to go to confession, if you don't think it's important to, stay sober, maybe the faith just isn't important to you. It's not a matter of being a good Catholic. It's a matter of what's important to you. If you don't think those things are important, ask yourself why. Maybe you don't want to be Catholic. Maybe you're not Catholic. Maybe you have a different definition of it than what the church says. But like the mountain climbing thing, if I decide that, being a good mountain climber is a matter of petting my cat, okay, I can do that. But do you really agree that that's what the definition is? I don't know. Who gets to make that definition? A lot of us would say the mountain climbers get to make that definition. If there's 10 mountain climbers in a room and they're real ones that don't just pet cats, and I say, oh yeah, I think it means petting my cat, and that's what I do a lot, so I'm a really good mountain climber, they'll probably think I'm a nut. Yeah, I would, wouldn't you? So I don't know. Does that help? Feel free to ask more questions, and we'll see. It's hard to answer these things too quick. Why do some people judge other people without getting to know them first? Okay, really important. You should always get to know people well and then judge them. No, I'm only kidding. No, that's what it kind of sounded like, though. No, don't judge. We already have that as something. Now, like I said before, there's common sense. There's some things you look at and you go, this is obvious. If somebody is a bully and they're really mean to people, you can address that behavior. You can confront them, and should, especially if they're hurting some other person. You should stand in. Don't be a bystander that just lets it happen. But you can address the behavior. We just don't condemn the person, because we don't know the reason. Years ago, they used to say that bullies had low self-esteem. The latest things I've read said that they have high self-esteem, which makes sense to me from my experience, having known a few bullies in my time, sometimes even in my adult life. But we just don't know. You don't know the person. You don't know why. There could be not a good reason, but there could be an explanation that if you knew the person better, if you knew that what had happened to them, you would understand it better. You might be in a better, more effective position to deal with it. But we really don't know anybody's heart, so we have to be really careful about that. Even when you get to know somebody, we never really know anybody's heart all the way through. So I'd say no matter how well you get to know them, don't judge them. It's not an easy thing to avoid. Sometimes that's really hard to avoid. And yeah, try. Okay, this one's a little hard to read. It's a little light. It's written kind of light. This is from class 2. Why are some looked down on if they don't believe in certain things? Okay, it's their beliefs. They should be left alone. Yeah, I mean, I understand. So there's kind of like 4 situations that can happen. Okay, I like to put things in these squares that have 4 panels in them like this, and across the top is, the person that's being looked down on, and on the side here is the person that is doing the looking down on. And this person that's looking down on somebody else can be roughly right or wrong. Let's just put it this way for fun. And across the top, the person being looked down on can be right or wrong. Now, if they're both right, I don't know how the one's looking down on the other one, but that can happen. I don't know, maybe. There's some way there. And if they're both wrong, it's kind of pointless, because if they're looking down on them, then they're just being a jerk, because they're just as mistaken as the other person. However, people that are wrong, in my experience, will look down on people that are right. And it's not like we get to see a lot of people being right, but that does happen. And there's a lot of reasons for that. People that look down on someone in that situation maybe feel guilty. They feel convicted, as we say. They feel called to account by the person that they're looking down on. And so the only thing they can do is look down on them and say, well, you're just stupid. And I see a lot of this. Not necessarily people are right, but sometimes the ignorant will look down on the smart. When I was in school, it was not always a good thing to be smart. And the bullies tended to be ignorant a lot of the time and would really make fun of people for knowing things. And from what I've been hearing, that's still true in some places. That ignorance is sometimes valued. I certainly see it in celebrity stuff. The other thing is when somebody has it in some way right and looks down on someone that really truly does have it wrong. And one of the things that you can see that with is people that have addictions, people that are abusing drugs, abusing alcohol, abusing sex, abusing any number of things. And people that don't have a problem with it will look down on them too much of the time. And there's 2 cases there. I mean, it's okay, with me there's always like multiple cases of everything. But one is that the person that's looking down on them doesn't understand their situation because they've never had that problem. A person like me, for instance, I do not have a problem with abusing alcohol. I'm not saying that there's been times that I drank more than I should. But for me, getting drunk is not something that appeals to me, and I don't necessarily like the taste of alcohol that much. And even in social situations, it's very, very rare for me to ever drink more than a little bit. If I'm having a really, really good time, I'll do more, but it's just not that often that I do it. Anyway, so for me, when I look at somebody that drinks too much, I have to be very, very careful how I deal with that. Not to look down on them, but to simply, ask, what can I do to support them? Is there anything that I can do? Sometimes it's good to say, I noticed that you really had a rough night and that you woke up, with vomit all over yourself. And, maybe, what are you thinking about that? Do you want to talk about it? Sometimes that's it. The other thing is sometimes people that have given something up can be very obnoxious and look down on somebody. So you have the situation. I remember people that quit smoking would sometimes get very, very upset with people that still smoke. Now with the vaping, it's a little bit different. I don't know what it's like now, but back with the old style cigarettes, and they could get really upset about it. And then the other thing too is, and then sometimes people look down on somebody else because they have the problem too, but they hide it, and no one really knows. So then they're in a sense, that other person is a reminder of their own problem, and then they'll be abusive, and sometimes that happens. Now, for all these situations, somebody can be the other way around. I mean, for me, alcohol is not an issue, but I understand a person that uses it the wrong way through the areas where I struggle. And if I have a hard time with something else, then I can understand better why they have a problem. There's a lot of compassion that's needed in this. For a person that's given it up, instead of being upset with the other person, they should remember how hard it was to give it up. And if it wasn't that hard, well, maybe they're not in the same spot. They need to understand that. Of course, if they're hiding it, they should keep their mouth shut, because look, they're having the same problem you are. You're just hiding it. Okay, so that's one thing. Now, the other thing is, about leaving them alone. The magician, quite a good one, illusionist, whatever, Penn Jillette of Penn and Teller, you can look up Penn and Teller and look at some of their stuff they do, is a very outspoken and well-known atheist. And he said recently, I don't know how recently now, sorry, at some point, he said that if Christians really believe that they are holding something of great value that's really important for people's lives, then why are they not proselytizing? He said, evangelizing. Why are they leaving people alone when they should be out pushing it, because it's saving people's lives? And I would go further and say it's not a matter of heaven and hell only. It's more the matter that a life lived in God, a life lived with an awareness and a desire to be ourselves in a very powerful way, and to live out what we've been called to be, why wouldn't you want that for somebody? And you have to do something. But there's a difference between looking down on someone and, in an abusive way, pushing your thing onto them, and very often just because it's your own thing, rather than being something that is valuable and living it. Instead, doing it as an invitation, living our lives in a way that makes others want to be like that living a life that draws others naturally. If we look at the preaching of Jesus and the example that he gave and the way he lived, a lot of it was invitation. People were flocking to him. He was not necessarily going out to a crowd and going, okay, everybody, come on, gather around, we're going to talk. I mean, it was very much that he was trying to get away and have a little break once in a while, a little peace and quiet. And nobody let him chill. People just kept coming to him because that was who he is, who he was. It just was amazing. So we should be like that. And I hope that in writing this, I'm guessing in writing this that maybe you feel this way, that you wish that people would leave you alone. And and that's hard. And almost everybody's going to do it wrong. I hope that at least with your experience with me, that you'll feel more invited and less put upon. You might be forced to be here. I'm sorry. That's tough. But you know what? We're all forced to do things that we'd rather not do sometimes. I'd rather not have to go to the office most of the time. I have lots of things I'd rather be doing. But very often we do things out of love for others. We do things because we're obligated to. And if you open your heart a little bit and keep an open mind, sometimes you can still get something out of things, even that you didn't want to be at. The number of times that I've got something from a situation where I didn't think I would. Just recently, I went to a conference on the weekend, and I really didn't think it was going to work out. All the ones I'd been to in the past had been really not that great. But I went really out of obedience, and because it was something that the management of the program wanted me to go to, and I did. And I was pleasantly surprised. Most of it was really, really good. That was great. And I got that little benefit because I was open to it. So we'll talk more about this, but be patient with other people. They have reasons. Sometimes the reasons are bad. Sometimes the reasons are good. A person can be trying to do a good thing, do it badly. A person can have bad motivations and do it badly. Most of the time when somebody has bad motivations, it doesn't really work out all that well. So you got to be patient with people. It goes back to John Donne's Meditation 17. None of us are alone. You know, we can't just go off and be left alone. We're acted on by people around us, for good or ill, and they don't all have a point of view, and they don't all necessarily look down on us. Everybody's acting on us. And we just have to try and pay attention, open our eyes, open our mind, look at what they're doing, look at what they're saying, take it all in. Even if they're abusive, take it all in and then try to make some understanding from it. I know for me, a lot of the abuse that I took when I was young, I say a lot, sorry. A lot of that abuse helped me to understand what I didn't want to do to others. And in my experience, if you feel put upon by others and like they're getting in your face, it's very easy to end up turning that around and becoming that kind of person too, in a different way. And you might think that can't happen, but I've seen it. So for me, having bad experiences made me more committed to not doing it to somebody else. Now, unfortunately, the things where I didn't have those negative experiences, that's where I make mistakes, because I haven't received it. I haven't experienced it against myself. So I might not think to be careful with others. But there's a lot of things I really try to be very careful about. A lot of bad experience when I was young changes the way that I do classes and changes the way I talk to young people, because I don't want to ever do what other people did to me. I could tell you some funny stories about that, even raising my children. Some of the things that happened to them where adults said things that were really, really not very respectful. And I learned from that too. My children learned from that. We don't go back necessarily and beat them up over it. I mean, the people that say it, we just sort of go, okay, that wasn't good. Let's make sure we don't do that. So anyway, I hope that helps. That's a really hard question. And I really understand wanting to just be left alone. But there are times, actually, I know somebody right now that I really need to bug them, one of my children. I really need to bug them to go to the dentist. I know they're going to have just a ton of cavities. It's going to be really bad. They're older. They're past the age where I should have to tell them this, but they don't take care of themselves. And I have to go bug them to go to the dentist. And if I don't, they may start losing teeth or have more painful stuff. So I have to bug them to go to the dentist, knowing the dentist is going to want to drill and put fillings in. Well, it's certainly not a welcome thing for me to be bugging them about it. They want me to leave them alone. But if I do, they will come to harm. So, yeah, I take a shot at it. I hope that helps. We'll stop this one and go make another one. Thanks.